makes me want to throw up and punch someone. Hello, welcome to Library of Peyton. I'm Peyton. Let's get into it. So today I'm going to be doing my March wrap-up. I read, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 books this month. And I'd say it's been a pretty good reading month for me. I would have liked to read more books physically, but I've been reading the Farseer trilogy, and those books are just kind of chunky, so it's taken me a while to get through them. So unfortunately, I haven't been able to read a ton physically, but I did listen to some great audiobooks, and also I did read a few books physically, so we'll dive into those. The weather this month has been really nice. That's why I'm outside right now. So I apologize if you hear any like birds or weird noises. Just ignore them, okay? Focus on me. I got you. Soon, Arizona will enter its devil's butthole era. So I will be hibernating inside for the summer. Just gotta enjoy this lovely weather while I can. Now, enough about the weather. Let's get into the books. So the first book I finished this month was Grown by Tiffany D. Jackson. This starts off with Enchanted, our main character, waking up with blood all over her, which she tries to convince herself is beet juice. I don't know why that's a thing, why she was trying to tell herself it was beet juice, but that was one thing that stuck out to me because she kept being like, there's all this blood. No, I mean beet juice. What is going on? Why are we talking about beet juice? But anyway, she did not remember anything from what happened last night, why she has blood all over her, what's going on. And then we kind of go back to the past. So Enchanted is a young black girl who dreams of becoming a famous singer, and she's the only black girl at her school, and her best friend is a Latina girl, I think, and they're like the only people of color at their school. That's just a little background on Enchanted. Anyways, her parents just really want her to focus on school and swimming, I think it was, but she tricks her mom into taking her to a singing competition. And then at this competition, there's a super famous R&B artist, Corey Fields, who sees her sing and eventually asks to be a mentor for her. Their relationship quickly becomes very toxic. They start like texting each other, and it's like obviously very inappropriate. A grown man should not be texting whatever, like 15-year-old or however old she is, and it gets more messed up from there. I don't want to spoil anything, so I won't say more, but Tiffany D. Jackson's writing is just so captivating. You're reading these horrific things, and you want to look away, and you want to say stop, and you want to scream at the characters, but you're helpless, and you're stuck in that moment, and you're so immersed in the world that it's really chilling. It's chilling. It's really horror, and it's like real life horror. The topics are definitely very dark for a YA book. Although it is YA, please check out content warnings and all that jazz. I do want to say a little bit more. So obviously the relationship surpasses a mentor-mentee level of relationship. I don't know if that's the right word. Obviously, it's not Enchanted's fault at all for getting swept up and eventually trapped in all this. And obviously, Corey, that disgusting man, is completely to blame. But I do question also how much the parents should be blamed. Although they were hesitant at first about allowing this grown man to mentor her, they kind of eventually just let it go and are like, do your thing, whatever. I don't know, you let your child hang out with a grown-ass man, especially a rich and famous grown-ass man who's probably gotten everything he's ever wanted in life. I don't know. Just seems like a bad idea to me. I don't have kids, but if I did have kids, I wouldn't let them do that. So a little parenting advice, don't let your kids hang out with grown men alone. Probably not a good idea. And also, more people to blame, the people that just stood by and watched it happen. Never saying anything, just letting it happen. People who blame it on Enchanted and are like jealous of her. Disgusting, despicable, but makes me want to throw up and punch someone. And yeah, it was just so dark, so horrific to read, but so compelling. Again, lots of content warnings, so please check those out. Next, I read The Villa. I was not a huge fan of this book, so I can't really even remember much. I feel like I became disinterested in the story and just stopped paying attention as much. And I guess the writing wasn't as compelling and immersive as the writing in for example, grown. So I just wasn't really in it. Wasn't in it to win it. So our main character is Emily, and she is a writer. If I'm thinking about the right book, I'm pretty sure she has some mystery books published, but that could also be another book. Side note, is it just me, or do so many thrillers have writers as the main characters? Are thrillers just disturbing self-inserts for authors? Most thrillers that I've read, I'm pretty sure the main character has been a writer. It's strange, is it not? Back to the book. So Emily has been best friends with Chess since they were kids. When I read the synopsis of this book to remember what it was about, I realized that her name was Chess, not Jess. It's Chess like the game. I listened to the audiobook and I heard Jess throughout the entire book, so I don't know how I missed that. Anyways, Chess is super successful as a self-help author, and so she's like super rich. Emily just got divorced, and Chess suggests that they take a girls' trip to Italy. And they stay at this fancy villa where a murder actually took place. So we go back and forth from the Emily and Chess story and to this murder story. And the murder happened in 1974, where there was 2 musicians and 2 stepsisters staying there. One guy dies, and then one girl, Mary, ends up writing one of the best horror novels ever, and then one girl, Lara, composes this platinum album or whatever. So in the present, Emily is diving into the villa's history, and she starts to write her own book about it as she finds clues in the villa, clues in Mary's book, and clues in Lara's album. Plus, Emily and Chess have their own issues, just classic first world problems, honestly. I didn't really care about anyone or anything in this book. It was pretty meh. This book is by Rachel Hawkins, and I also read Reckless Girls by Rachel Hawkins a few months ago, and I felt similarly. I just wasn't very interested in the book, so I think maybe her writing style just doesn't really appeal to me as much. Somehow I ended up reading another Rachel Hawkins book this month without even realizing it, but I'll get into that later. Next, I read Demon Copperhead, and I loved this book. I really, really loved it. It takes place in like Kentucky, Tennessee, Virginia kind of area, which aren't really places that I've ever been before, but I feel like I had a lot of personal conceptions, is that the right word? I don't know, about the type of people that live there. And so this was a very eye-opening book to me. I guess I'll expound on that later. So Demon, his real name is Damon, but he goes by Demon, was born to a single mother that struggles with drug addiction. And this book just follows his life as he trudges through abusive stepfathers, foster care, child labor, addiction, love, loss, all that jazz. I could go into heavy detail, but I won't. And that's because I think it's better going into it knowing as little as possible. I literally had no idea what this book was going to be about when I started reading it, and I really enjoyed not knowing much about it and just being taken on this boy's life journey. One thing I want to say about the writing is it's really cool because it's written how this kid would talk, which uses certain slang and ways of phrasing things that I wasn't very used to. So it took a little bit to get into it first, just because I was having to process more what he was saying and like read the words, process it, and compute what was going on, and then I would be like, that's what he's saying. But then you kind of start to just get used to it, and you just fall in love with this kid. I just wanted the best for Demon, and I just wanted him to be happy. It makes me like tear. Like, I definitely cried during this book, and I'm like about to start crying now because he's just such a good guy, such a sweet kid, and he deserves the world, honestly. Although I did cry, I also laughed and I smiled in this book because there is lots of happy moments and funny moments, just all the emotions. Barbara just does such a good job of making me love characters so fiercely and also hate certain characters so fervently as well. These characters just felt so real to me that they could evoke visceral reactions within me. And that's pretty cool, pretty impressive, if I do say so myself. How does she do it? Teach me your ways, Barbara. One thing, this book also does focus a lot on the opioid epidemic and how companies were literally targeting the poor people in these areas, getting them hooked on drugs and just making absolute bank from it. And that is just so horrible, so disgusting, and so sad. It's so tragic. So as I was mentioning about how it was kind of eye-opening to me, I do have to admit I was kind of prejudiced towards rednecks and hillbillies, those kind of people. But after reading this book, I do have a lot more sympathy for them. They just have a different way of life with different goals than most other city folk tend to have. And this book kind of opened my eyes to that. Yes, there are a lot of racist, homophobic, transphobic, white trash kind of rednecks, but that doesn't encapsulate the entire community. They're just often the loudest. So I think that's something important to keep in mind when you're looking at any community. Obviously, the people who are most disturbing in their views are going to get the most attention, and we have to remember that not everyone is like that within their community. Please read this book and let me know your thoughts. I would love to hear them. All right, the next book I read was The Undertaking of Heart and Mercy. I would categorize this as a cozy-ish fantasy romance. I enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty cute. I'm honestly not a big fan of cozy fantasy or pure romance books. Sorry, you're gonna hate me, but I didn't really enjoy Legends and Lattes. It just didn't have enough going on for me. And then I haven't read a lot of pure romances, but I just need stakes, I need action, I need people dying. I need more than just a workplace romance kind of thing going on. I think that this was a good book for me because it did have enough action and gross dead body stuff to satisfy me. I also really like the world building. I do have a lot of questions, but I thought it was very unique and an interesting world. This is overall, I would say, a romance book, and it does have a pretty predictable plot and third act conflict, but that's not always a horrible thing. Sometimes you're just there to have a good time. You don't need to be surprised all the time. Golfers are yelling. We have Heart and Mercy as our main characters. Heart, he is a marshal that basically patrols this area where some type of gods used to be imprisoned. The history was really interesting to read about, but again, I do have a lot of questions because some things just didn't really make sense to me, but maybe I don't know. It was weird, okay? But it was good. The gods aren't there anymore, and this area now has zombies in it, and Heart kills those zombies. One thing I was like, why did they need to go and kill those zombies? Why don't they just let them be in that area that they, for the most part, can't get out of instead of endangering themselves by going at it? Just, that didn't make sense to me. But sometimes you just have to just enjoy the book for what it is. And so these zombies, you kill them by shooting or stabbing them in the appendix because that's where the soul is, apparently. And yes, there is some way that people who have to get their appendix removed still have a soul. So don't worry, all you appendicitis survivors, you can still have a soul in this book. So these zombies are basically dead bodies that wandering souls have taken over by going into the appendix and chilling out there. So that's Heart's job, killing those zombies. Mercy basically runs her family's morgue. They prepare bodies, they do rituals on them, and then they build ships put the bodies in, and then those bodies are burned in those ships or whatever. So Heart delivers his bodies that he kills and takes them to various morgues throughout the world, the country. I don't know what it is. Or as they're called in this book, undertakers. They're not morgues, they're undertakers. Mercy and Heart had a really bad first encounter, and it wasn't even that bad, okay? And now they just hate each other for pretty much no reason. So yes, it's one of those enemies to lovers stories where they have no good reason for being enemies, and they aren't actually enemies, they're just don't like each other. And it's also very grumpy sunshine, boy grump, girl sunshine. So that is, like, it's got those tropes, okay? So going into it, you need to know it's got those tropes, you need to like those tropes in order to enjoy the book, probably. So Heart is a depressed boy, relatable, and Loki is a soft boy as well, and decides to just vent out his feelings in a letter addressed to a friend, which means it's a letter to no one because he has no friends. He puts it in a mailbox, expecting it to just get thrown away because it's not really addressed to a person. And also I should note that these like snarky animals that like to drink and gossip and live forever deliver mail in this world. So for some reason, this letter gets delivered to Mercy, and then they begin to write back and forth, falling for each other without even realize they're writing to someone they hate in real life. Then Heart finds out that he's writing to Mercy. Dun, dun, dun. And the story kind of goes on from there. So there's other like plot lines going on too. Heart is forced to train this kid to be a marshal. I can't remember the kid's name. but their relationship is really cute. I just love a grumpy, reluctant mentor trope. And Mercy's whole family is super adorable and funny too. And there's also some queer rep. I probably honestly ship that relationship more than Heart and Mercy's. They're just so cute together and so funny. I did have a good time reading it. Just don't go into it expecting peak literature, and I think you will enjoy it too if you like that kind of this kind of stuff. There's also a few spicy, smutty scenes, so don't say I didn't warn you. It's nothing crazy, but it's there. Okay. So after I read Grown, I immediately put a bunch of Tiffany, why can I not say her name? Tiffany D. Jackson's books on hold at the library so that I could read them all because she's amazing. So next I read Monday's Not Coming. This book shattered my brain. The twist at the end had me so shook. I did not see it coming. Get it? Monday's Not Coming. Did not see it coming. I feel like a lot of times when I listen to audiobooks, I'm just along for the ride, not really trying to predict things. So maybe that's why it surprised me so much. But if I think back, there probably might have been signs. I would say I want to reread it to see, but I have way too many books that I need to read at the moment, so I am making zero promises on that, and will probably not do that, but maybe one day. Our main character is Claudia, and she's in middle school, I think. She is inseparable with her best friend Monday, and they do everything together. Claudia was on a trip for summer. She comes back, Monday's not answering her phone. She's very hurt because her best friend is not responding to her. But she's like, maybe she's busy, it's okay. School starts, she goes to school, Monday's not there. And Claudia still cannot get in contact with her. She goes to Monday's mom, she goes to Monday's sister, and she doesn't get any help. She pretty much just gets yelled at and told to mind her own business. Days turn into weeks, and Claudia is desperate to find Monday because she's still not there. But nobody else really seems to be worried. I think that's all I'm gonna say about it. It's really good. It was a good time, okay? And again, all of Tiffany's books are very dark for YA, so check out the content warnings. I would say this twist was something I normally wouldn't like. I don't want to spoil anything. Okay, I'm gonna spoil something, so I'll tell you when you can skip ahead. It's not really a spoiler, it's just the idea of the twist. The twist involves mental illness. I would say normally I don't like that kind of stuff, but I think it was pretty well done in this book. I'm curious as to how realistic it is, if this kind of mental illness is actually something that can happen to somebody. Yeah, if you are completely against mental illness being a twist in a book, I would advise against this book. Otherwise, I think you'll enjoy it. Next, another one of Tiffany D. Jackson's amazing books, allegedly. So our main character, Mary B. Addison, allegedly killed the baby when she was 9 years old. The public is convinced that she did it. It's a story they want to hear, a white baby killed by a black girl. So Mary is sent to what she calls baby jail for 6 years, and she now lives a heavily restricted life in a group home. She's unlike a lot of the other girls in the group home. She's motivated, she's smart, she dreams of going to college. She's a different group home girly. She is assigned to work at a nursing home, and there she meets Ted, a guy who's also in a group home, I think. I'm pretty sure he's 18 or 19 and she's only like 15, so their relationship is a little iffy. She gets pregnant from their rendezvous at the nursing home. When Mary realizes that the state's gonna take away her baby, because obviously she is a baby killer and she's 15 and she's living in a group home and cannot provide for the baby, she decides that she's not going to sit back and let this happen because she wants that baby. So she decides she's not going to sit back and take the blame for what her mother did. So that's kind of the premise. I really love this book. I could not stop listening. I do think I need to talk about a spoiler though, so I'll let you know when the spoiler's over. This ending, it hurt me. I was ride or die for this girl. My heart was gushing with all the love and kindness that she was getting from her SAT teacher and the lawyer, and just, I was like, you go girl, you get what you deserve. You prove all these people wrong. I was absolutely convinced that she was innocent. But no, she killed the baby. And I was heartbroken. And then she thinks that her baby isn't gonna cry. No. That baby's gonna cry. And then she's gonna kill another baby, her own baby this time. I'm just so sad. That poor fictional baby. I wish it the best. Next, I read The Writing Retreat. I wasn't sure if I was gonna like this book, but it was a book of the month pick, I believe, and I saw a lot of good things about it, so I decided to give it a shot. I really had no idea what it was gonna be going into it, but I thought it might be kind of a haunted house kind of story, which personally I don't really enjoy. I don't know why, it's just not something that appeals to me. It actually was not a haunted house story though, so I actually had a really good time reading this. One thing that really stood out to me was just the writing. The writing was really good. I don't know, good doesn't do it justice, but it was just so good. It had super great descriptions and it was just pretty lyrical writing that wasn't overwhelmingly so. I think the writing really had to be good to make this book work because it is about a bunch of writers. So this book, there are 5 people who are chosen to go on a month-long retreat at the remote, I just bit my lip, the remote estate of Rosa Vallow, I think was her name. She is like a goddess of feminist horror. Our main character is obsessed with her in all her books. Alex gets lucky and snags a spot, despite being stuck with writer's block for the past year. And unfortunately, Alex's ex-best friend and now enemy also got in. When they get there, they realize that they have to start writing a book from scratch, and the best one gets a 7-figure publishing deal. And then people start to die. And it's pretty thrilling, if I do say so myself. It's also pretty cool because there are snippets of Alex's book that she's writing within the book, so it's very meta, shall I say? I just thought the book was a great combination of rich people drama, self-obsessed writer drama, catty girl drama, and legit danger. Next, I read Assassin's Apprentice and also Royal Apprentice, and I'm currently on the last one, Assassin's Quest, I think it's called. I'm not going to talk about these books too much because I plan on doing a whole video for the trilogy because it's so good and I love it so much. To keep it short and sweet, it's about a bastard of the king in waiting of this kingdom who is dropped off unceremoniously at the royal keep when he was 6 years old. He's pretty much raised by the stable master, taking care of horses and dogs for a few years, but then eventually the king decides to utilize him as the tool that he has the potential to be and has him trained as an assassin too. He's called Fitz. He doesn't really have a name. Throughout most of the first book, he goes by Fitz, which means son of, because he's the son of chivalry. That's a hard word to say. So he's called Fitz chivalry. I'll call him Fitz because obviously I cannot say chivalry. Fitz kind of has a couple different lives he has to keep secret from other people, and it's interesting how he juggles all of that. And he also has a power called the wit that allows him to pretty much communicate with animals and see and sense what they're feeling and also bond with them. The wit is looked down upon. It is seen as a beastly magic that's disgusting and that should not be practiced. And then he also has the skill, which allows people to speak mind to mind, read thoughts, control people, and influence their minds, and that kind of stuff. And the skill kind of runs in Farseer blood. He is a Farseer. The Farseers are the royal family. That's how he got that magical talent. So the big issue in the kingdom is that the Red Raiders are raiding towns. They're taking captives and bringing them back as shells of people that just kill and destroy and steal, and they seem to have no emotions at all. So people are being forced to kill or be killed by their loved ones that have returned. Yeah, that's kind of a little bit about it. I'll talk more about it in another video, but I'm obsessed. It's weird because, especially in the first book, I feel like nothing really happened. Like, stuff happened, but nothing seemed super, I don't know, it just seemed time just seemed to continue on, because reading from Fitz's perspective, and he is very just kind of dismissive of big things that happen in his life. Maybe things happen, but it just doesn't seem important. It's hard to explain, but I still was and am enraptured by it and cannot put it down. So would highly recommend those books. Stay tuned if you want to hear more about them. Next, I read Wrong Place, Wrong Time. This book was such a unique, cool concept. So it starts off with our main character witnessing her 17-year-old son kill a man. There's an airplane, I hope, or wait, it's a helicopter. I'll wait a little bit. Okay, I think it's far enough away. So As I was saying, her son gets taken into custody, blah, blah, blah. She's devastated. How could her sweet, nerdy son do such a thing? The next morning, she wakes up and it's like the murder never happened. And that's because it hasn't happened yet, because it's yesterday. So each night she goes to sleep, she goes back in time. It starts off with just one day, but eventually the time jumps start to get longer and longer until it's years and years in the past. So as she's traveling backwards in time, she's trying to figure out how to stop the murder, if she even can stop the murder. She doesn't even know what she's capable of, what she can do, why this is happening to her. She's just confused, and it's very frustrating because anything she does do, any people she talks to, they won't remember it or anything because she's moving backwards in time, not forwards in time. It's a super cool concept that I think was executed really well. And there's just so many twists and turns that really keep you on your toes. Like, you think you got it all figured out. You're like, this is why it happened, and then psych, you're wrong. I would definitely recommend it to those who like sci-fi and thrillers. And probably for fans of the 22 Deaths of Madison May, I think those people like it as well. Next, I read The Wife Upstairs. Out of the books that I've read by Rachel Hawkins, this one was probably my favorite. It still wasn't an amazing, mind-blowing work of art, but I think it was better than the other two. It was pretty predictable, but I had a relatively good time. So we have Jane, and she is running from her past and is wound up in Alabama, where she walks dogs for rich people. She also steals stuff from them in the process. While walking dogs, she meets Eddie, whose wife recently drowned in a boating accident with her best friend Bee. So, of course, Jane and Eddie fall for each other, but things are kind of complicated by the past she's trying to hide and the mystery of Eddie's wife. And that's really all I can say. Pretty mid. Next, I have some questions for you. This book is considered a thriller, but I'd say it's more just suspenseful. That doesn't mean it's bad, and doesn't mean I didn't enjoy it. It just wasn't thrilling. The way it's written is super cool. It's second person. It's almost like a letter to someone she knows. I'm not gonna say who. I don't know if it's spoilery who. I can't remember. Anyways, it's like a letter. It's like she's writing a letter to someone. So we have Bodhi, who is a successful true crime podcaster and film professor. When she was young, I'm pretty sure her family died, but I can't remember how. It has left my brain. Maybe a boating accident, but I read another book where her family died in a boating accident. I don't know, maybe a boating accident. Anyways, her family's dead. After her family died, she ended up going to a fancy boarding school on scholarship in high school. Her senior year, her former roommate Thalia dies. Her body was found floating in a swimming pool. So not fun. And Omar Evans, the black athletic trainer, is convicted and has been in prison since. Now, as an adult, Bodhi has been asked back to teach some classes at Granby, the boarding school, and she accepts, and she returns to teach a film class and a podcast class. Bodhi inevitably is drawn back to the case, and her obsession is only exacerbated by the fact, I wouldn't say she had an obsession, but it kind of turns into obsession, and it's exacerbated by the fact that one of her students chooses to create a podcast on the case and is convinced that Omar is innocent. That's kind of what it's about. It was good. The twists definitely surprised me. I kept kind of changing my mind about who I thought did it. It was good. Yeah. All right, final two books. They're both by the same author. First book, 20 Years Later. I really enjoyed this book. Both this book and the next book were written by Charlie Donlea. He just does a really good job of weaving together so many different events and people that all at first seem completely unrelated. So you're like reading about some random kid's experience at camp, and you're like, how does this have anything to do with the story that I'm reading? And then it all comes together and you're just absolutely mind blown. Just so you know, the camp thing does not have to do with this book. It actually has something to do with the next book, but that was an example, okay? Also, side note, I read the author's bio because I was trying to figure out what pronouns Charlie uses, and listen to this, straight from the bio. A late bloomer. He was 20 years old when he read his first novel, The Firm by John Grisham, and knew that he would someday write thrillers. There is no way this man got through 20 years of life without reading a single novel. That is a straight up lie, okay? You cannot convince me that he had never read a book until 20 years old. Maybe up until 20 years, he read only nonfiction books, not novels. No. I digress. Back to the book. So our main character is Avery Mason, and she is the host of a news show called American Events, and she's really good at what she does. The opening scene is literally her being dropped from 15 feet in the air in a minivan into water to show how to get out of a sinking car. So she just is really invested in the news and doing cool stuff to bring people to the news, I guess, something like that. Let me backtrack a little bit though. So 20 years ago, a famous author is found hanging from his building, literally hanging from a rope. His hands are tied behind his back. He's got a ball gag in his mouth. He's got whip marks on his body. Looks like a kinky sex thing gone a little too far. Victoria is the primary and only suspect because her urine is in the toilet. Her blood is on stuff. She's got fingerprints all over the place. It's a mess. It's obviously her, right? So she's in the process of fighting to prove her innocence. But then 9/11 happens and she dies because she's in the Twin Towers. The case just ends because everyone is focused on 9/11 and also the obvious suspect is dead and the victim is dead, so who cares anymore, right? Then we jump back to current day. New DNA technology has helped scientists identify the first 9/11 victim in many years, and it's Victoria. Avery hears about this and thinks it might be a cool story. She doesn't know anything about the murder charges, she just hears about someone being identified and thinks, hey, that might be a cool story. And she also has some other personal stuff that she needs to get done in New York, so she goes to New York to follow up on this lead. Avery ends up finding out about the murder case and speaks to Victoria's sister and hears a voicemail that Victoria left right before she died, claiming her innocence. The voicemail is very convincing. Avery, along with this ex-FBI agent who had been assigned to the case as a cop, begin doing some digging. And everyone just has so much baggage and secrets of their own, and it's all just really addicting and complicated and like weaves together really seamlessly, and I just and the ending really threw me for a loop. I still cannot decide whether I like it or not, but it was a very like kind of moment, you know? You're just like, what? So yes, I liked it. And of course, because I liked it, I immediately just decided to read another book by Charlie, and that was called Those Empty Eyes. So this one was also super great. I think I liked the other one a little bit more, but they were both really good. So our main character is Alex, and when she was 17, someone came into her home at night and killed her parents and her little brother. She stayed safe by hiding behind a grandfather clock. And this book made me want to get a grandfather clock. Not to hide behind if a murderer comes into my house, but just because they seem pretty cool. Seems like it would be a good addition to a home. Although I'm sure they're super expensive and I think they're also like super heavy. But maybe one day I'll get a grandfather clock. Anyways, Alex was accused of the murder because she was holding the gun, covered in her parents' blood, freaking out, literally in shock. She can't function and they're bombarding her with all these accusations and questions, and she's incapable of answering because she just witnessed her little brother die, is sitting in the blood of her parents. Like, obviously, she's not in the right state of mind to be defending herself. So she gets sent to juvie and stuff, but thankfully a cop at the scene realized how messed up everything was and got her criminal defense lawyer husband to defend Alex. So she gets out of jail, she gets a bunch of money, and is kind of adopted into the cop and lawyer's family. Unfortunately, many people still think that she did it. All those true crime fanatics are obsessed with the case, think she is the true killer, and they kind of make her life a living hell. She moves to the UK, that doesn't work out, and then we flash forward to the present day, where Alex is working for Garrett, who is that lawyer, as a legal investigator, and she wears contacts, she's got piercings, she changed her hair, she has tattoos, so she's just kind of staying hidden by sticking out in a way. She is still trying to figure out who killed her family and why, so that's kind of a side project that she has while she's doing investigating for this criminal defense legal firm. Now, kind of a random pivot, there's this girl, Laura, who is about to release a podcast episode that exposes rape and cover-ups at her university college campus, and she disappears. And there's some other cases as well that are introduced within the book, and there's all these connections, and they all fit together somehow, and it's just like, how did Mr. Illiterate Until 20 Charlie connect all this random stuff into a well-developed story? I don't know. It's mind-boggling, but it's really good, and it's well done. I enjoyed it. It was a good time. Final book, and I will stop talking. I'm sure you've had enough of my voice. I haven't actually finished this book, but I figured I would talk about it now because I will probably finish it today or tomorrow, and I will not remember anything by the time I do my next wrap up. So I'm listening to Only a Monster. This is the first YA I've read in a while. Can't really listen to adult fantasy on audiobook just because it's too complicated for my little brain to process, and I like to be able to kind of flip back easily and look at things to recall certain aspects of either the plot or characters or world building or whatever. That's why I mostly listen to thrillers on audiobook, because I can just go with the flow and be surprised and shocked by things. But anyways, I wanted a little breather from thrillers, so I decided to try this out. It's okay so far, it's just very YA. We have Joan, who is a 16-year-old kind of nerdy gal. She discovers that she is a monster along with all of her family. Monsters in this book are just people that can steal time off of the end of other people's lives to time travel, which I feel like it's weird calling them monsters. I don't know. I would have picked a different word if I was the writer, but you know, that's just me. It's okay. Anyways, she is half monster. She's also half British, half Chinese. So she's got a lot of halves. She's a big old fraction. And anyways, so she accidentally steals a few hours from this old guy and goes forward a few hours in the day, and that's how she discovers that she is a monster, that her family is a monster. And then literally the next day, she comes head to head with a monster slayer that was actually a boy that she was kind of dating. So the timing is just oddly convenient. I'll let it slide. She ends up having to work with this snobby boy, Aaron, who is the heir to a monster family that hates her monster family. He's mostly like so mean, but then he'll randomly be super kind and understanding as a teacher to her about monster stuff, and then he'll just go back to being so mean. It's so annoying. One thing that really bothers me is that Joan literally knows nothing. She is just lost and confused and has no idea what's going on or anything about how her monster powers work. And I do not like being confused and not knowing things. I am a control freak. I like to know what is going on. And so it's been hard being stuck in her head this whole time. This book has really made me think about some philosophical things. Is the life of a loved one worth more than the life of strangers? I do not think so, but I think a lot of people would disagree, and I think that's something that this main character Joan is struggling with. Is it worth stealing time from other people's lives in order to save her family? I don't know. And technically she's not killing them, she's just taking off short bits at the end of their lives. Is that okay, or is that still somewhat killing them? Is that considered evil? And is that different than, say, smoking around people or causing someone stress? Things that do scientifically take off time from people's lives. Like, am I evil for probably stealing many years off of my parents' lives because of all the stress that I have caused them with all my issues? I don't know. It makes you think. That's definitely something I do struggle with, is feeling guilty for hurting people around me because of mental health. I think that it's hard. It causes a lot of guilt, and that just perpetuates the mental illness. So that's always a hard thing to deal with. And I think that most people with mental illness kind of deal with that. Yeah, I just got really, really deep and sad there for a moment. But yeah, those are all the books that I read in March. I have no idea what I'll be reading next month. I do not do TBRs. I kind of just read based on what comes available at my library. Currently, I have like 10 books that keep popping up for me to borrow, but I just keep delaying the hold because I've been reading the Farseer trilogy for a while and I don't have time to read those yet. Hopefully I'll get to some of those. I also lately have been reading a lot on the Kindle app through the library, but I'd like to read some more physical books, and I have some that I need to read, so maybe I'll read some of those. So let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them, and if any of these sounded interesting to you. Also, let me know what your favorite book was that you read this month. Maybe I'll check it out next month. I'd say my favorite book this month, probably just the Farseer trilogy as a whole. I also really did like Demon Copperhead, but I think I'm a fantasy gal through and through, okay? It's just what brings me the most joy. That's that. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to, maybe like, leave a comment. I'd love to talk to you. Maybe subscribe if you want to. All right, goodbye.